How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Elvira Gonzalez here. So, let's take a look at the positioning layouts by looking at this spec, right? There is a course that I'm actually looking at, taught by Josh Komua, a software engineer that previously worked at Khan Academy, and which is one of the first company to ever use React at scale. And then he went through Gatsby. So he created now a series of courses for understanding CSS as JavaScript developers, and the other is for React, as well as some animations like whimsical animations and that kind of stuff. So, but I do want to focus is on looking at reading the spec. Why? Because I don't know, but in my experience, most of these courses out there, they just wanna show you is the facade or the more educational friendly content. But if you are serious of not learning but understanding where all of this came from, which it can become a quick, which it can become a quick rabbit hole pretty quickly, which is what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then how that came into existence, which this kind as a document, as a way to describe now scientific paper initially, which is something that universities were using as a way to do R&D, research and development, for, at the beginning, the military industrial complex. And they receive financing via the governments, as well as the financial institution, or financial industrial complex as well. Something that we're gonna take or mention that later on. But the thing here is that you can become. This is a rabbit hole, but I just only want to focus is on one thing, which is this: the cascading style sheet, or how you can style these HTML documents that you can send over different computers and exchange that. So this way of styling this kind of document, and according to CSS first, is to say, hey, yeah, this is a styling document here for not only to describe the presentation of document written in HTML or XML, which is any markup language, right? And those markup language are, for example, is XHTML, right? Some of us might have used this, right? Or the alternative version as an XML, right? In practice, very few XHTML documents are served over the network or over the web, right? What's more common is MathML, okay? Remember, this is our document to actually show the intention of this is to exchange document across computers, okay? So you have now the MathML. Let me see if I can read. Okay, the spec here. I'm not gonna get into the details, but I do want is to at least show some of the examples like this, providing Pythagorean theorems and deriving quadratic formula, right? So providing a Pythagorean theorem, that's interesting. And this is how you started to describe all of these different components in this language, right? That's what it called extensible markup language, particularly in the mathematics. It can become quite cumbersome. This is all the thing to describe this one. Oh my god. And you need to wrap them into the math, So the document knows, hey, okay, or the parser knows what needs to do. So this is for the Pythagorean theorem. Not sure what the Pythagorean theorem is. At the end of the day, I quite forgot about that. It's the fundamental relationship in Euclidean geometry between the three sides of a right angle. It states that the area of a square, it states that the area of a square whose side is the hypotenuse, which is the side opposite to the right angle. Exactly, is the side opposite to the right angle, and all of this. And I know, I wanna hit the brake here and again, because you may say, what in the French toast do I care about this? Is this in CSS at the end of the day? Bear with me, please. Bear with me. So what am I mentioning, or what am I describing here to recap about the Pythagorean theory? This is describing the relationships of stuff. Particularly is you have now a triangle, right? And then you want to calculate, here is the area, all right? It's a fundamental relationship in Euclidean geometry between the three sides of a right triangle. If stated that the area of a square whose side is the hypotenuse, right, like this one, is equal to the sum of the area of the squares of the two other sides. So you get now is this and this. So in other words, what square is describing here is an area, right? And again, and a rectangle of the same dimensions. So this small rectangle here with this another small rectangle here, when you add it, right, it's going to give you the area of the longer portion. Okay, so the yeah, it's like how do I use this, right? So what is the practical use of this? Okay, so that's a good question, right? This is also entering into the realm of geometry, and why geometry is something that is interesting, right? Because this is another way of how you can actually visualize this, right? Right? It's describing now, if you have now a square, this is how you might look at things, right? Again, you might wonder, yeah, that's fine, but why do I even care? Why? What is this? Where can we use this? Right? All of this is more about the geometry of things, and the geometry right now, is Euclidean geometry, is the way of how you're starting to see the relationship among different shapes. And I want to, and by this, right, Euclidean geometry, and 3 dimensions. Exactly. This Euclidean geometry, right, is synthetic geometry. So this kind of geometries, or this mathematics, or this system to describe things based on the observations, because at the end of the day, this is what mathematics is. The word mathema comes from this, is that things, what one gets to know. That's what the mathema comes from, right? In this systems of looking at how you can represent these shapes that has a lot of relationship of what you can see in the real world, and the key word here is relationship. So Euclidean geometry, which is part of this Pythagorean example of using the math here, and I'm going into this, and then I go back to what I really care into this video of this particular language, markup language, is that with the mathematics or with the mathema, you want to see the relationship, because this is how the mind is captured. This is how the mind is seduced to understand things. Not because I say so, because when you have 4 years old, you're starting to try. Your mind is trying to wire that things up, right? To make sense of the environment in which is living. So not only in terms of learning the language, but also learning how to walk, how to even breathe, and then how to jump, how to run, and all of these different things that happen here. The key thing here is relationship. Again, the reason why I'm actually recording this series of videos, to understand how all of this actually makes sense. So this is XML, okay? It allows you to describe is not only HTML documents, hypertext documents that contains text or image or videos or audio, but also interactivity like canvas, okay? So the XML is a way to describe other type of documents. So math is one of them. SVG is this how you describe now this vectors graphics or scalable vector graphics. So instead of describing that as an image, which are not precise, it's a fixed dimension, it's like a photo, right? So with this scalable vector graphics, you can now show animations or image, and no matter the size where you are viewing this, you're gonna see that 2010, right? Vision 2020. Okay. They also have is the RSS. I am not quite familiar with this, but this is really simple syndications. Refers to several XML documents, formats designed for publishing sites updates. When you subscribe, okay. This format has not been so popular. When you subscribe to a website RSS feed, the website sends information and update to your RSS reader in an RSS document called a feed. So you don't need to check all your favorite websites manually, as long as that website implements that really simple syndications. I don't know what is the current state of this particular document. User interface of an RSS. Interesting. As long as that website server actually implement that, you will get the when there is an update, you will going to get that. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Again, that's not part of today's video. All right. And okay, so there are several documents here. In RDF, what the French source is this? Resource Description Framework is a language developed by W3C for representing information on the World Wide Web, such as web page. RDF provides standard way of encoding resource information so it can be exchanged in a fully automated way between applications. Is this something that's still being used, or who is, well, actually Apple here? was developed by Ramana Guha. Holy fuck. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Guha was named as a distinguished alumnus of the Indian Institute of Technology Madras for contributing to structuring data representation and specification and their impact on the web. Context and formalization. Okay, that's interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, okay. Good. So, yeah. So you also have this another document here, or they mention this is a framework. It is a method to describe and exchange graph data. To exchange graph data here. Okay. Interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. Okay. Alright. Okay, cool. 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 Cool, 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 cool. So, back again to what I really care. Okay. Which is this. So CSS, right, allow you to now styling all of these kind of documents. Hypertext or math or SVG or even websites that are constantly updated or when you want to share graph as well. So CSS is among the core language of the open web and is standardized across web browsers according to the W3 spec, which is something that I'm going to see right now, but for positioning layout. Previously, the developing of various parts of CSS spec was done synchronously, which allowed the versioning of the latest recommendation. You might have heard about CSS 1, 2.1, or 3, and there will never be a CSS 3 or CSS 4. Rather, everything is not just CSS, with individual CSS modules having versions numbers. That's interesting. So after CSS 2.1, the scope of the spec increased significantly, and the progress on different CSS models started to differ so much that it became more effective to develop and release recommendations separate per modules instead of versioning the CSS specifications. So that the CCC now periodically takes snapshot of the latest stable CSS spec, which is a compilation of modules, and individual modules progress. CSS models now have versions numbers or levels, such as CSS color model level 5, right? So again, so the CSS, the way how it's developed, is based on all of these different modules. Let's take a look at what are the modules right now. Okay, so we have is this 2007, 2010, 15, and then now they have become very active. You know, so let's take a look at this, right? Here, what are the different modules here? So what is CSS, user agent, working draft, candidate recommendations, yada 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 yada. This is the cascading, reliable, fair, release candidate recommendations. Okay, the following specs are considered to be in a reliable state, meaning they have largely stable implementation and spec, but are not yet at recommendation level due to minor issues or needs for additional implementations report. Media query level 4, CSS scroll snap model, scroll bar, grid layout model level 2, CSS cascading and inheritance model level 5, color adjustment model level 1, and conditional rules here. Is there a way to look at all of the different models? Okay, got it. There you are. Cascading style sheets. These profiles include only specs that we consider stable and for which we have enough implementation experience that we are sure of their stability. And here is when you can look at the different models of how this is developed. So CSS level 2, latest, the syntax model, the style attributes, media queries, conditions, level 3 selectors, namespace, cascading and inheritance, values and units, CSS custom property for cascading variables model, custom property for cascading variable models, CSS box model level 3, color models, background, image, fonts, writing modes, multi-column layer model level 1, CSS flexible box, basic user interface, containment, transforms, compositions, and blending, CSS easing functions, and contour style. And then you have another, okay, a reliable candidate, like media queries, the grid, the cascade, the color, adjustment model, and the condition. Fairly stable model with limited implementations or experience. The display model 3, writing modes, fragmentation, box alignment, text masking, speech, even speech, bro. Even speech. And then you got models with rough interoperability. Okay. Also, the following model has been widely deployed with rough interoperability. Their details are not fully worked or sufficiently well specified, and they need more testing and bug fixing. Transitions will change, filter effects, CSS font loading models, CSS box sizing, CSS transform models, CSS list, encounter, logical property, interesting, logical properties. This is already done, right? This is already done. Okay. Logical property, CSS positioning layout level 3, resize observer, web animations. Oh, interesting. Even the resizer observer. CSS fonts, motion path, CSS object model, selectors, and CSS levels. Okay. CSS level 1, consider the CSS specification to be obsolete. Okay. So what's relevant is the CSS level 2. It's technically the level 3C recommendation. And now they are working on the CSS level 3, builds on the CSS level 2 model, level model by model, and using is this, and CSS level 4 and beyond. And there is no CSS level 4. Independent model can reach level 4 or beyond, but CSS the language no longer has levels. Okay, it's just CSS, and then you have the CSS profiles here. Got it. Partial implementations, implementation of unstable property. Yeah, this is requirement for responsible implementation of CSS, safe to release, text media security, and terms of index. Terms of index, selector index, add rules, and it's here is describing this property index and the values here. Interesting. Acknowledgement, conformance. Okay. Normative reference. Okay, normative reference, like this. So here is when you can actually look at all of these different models developed in implement independently developed. Compositing, CSS background 3, CSS box 3. Okay, CSS Cascade 4, and all this kind of stuff. So what I'm currently interested is on not only on the display, the CSS display, but it's at the CSS position here, like this. CSS Positioning Layout Module Level 3. Welcome. welcome, 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 welcome. Okay, I'll be right back. Well, that'll be all for this video, and in the next video I'm going to now read about this spec and understand truly what this thing is doing. So take care, bye bye.